taking the time to finally answer some of your questions, to question some of your answers. I mean, oh yes, answer some of your questions. So let me go ahead and get right to it. What first got me into mixed martial arts? Well, I was at a Hastings one time, and I would go there a lot just to go and look around what they had on for DVD. Whether it was, usually I would go for two things. I'm like a dog, going like how the dog usually goes for the jugular, or usually goes to sniff your ass. For me, I always go to Hastings to look at the horror section. If it's not the horror section, it's always mixed martial arts. Even though I usually know ahead of time whether there is going to be a mixed martial arts DVD out, because I'm that much of a fanatic and a collector. So, I'm very crazy about mixed martial arts. I love it. I try to get everybody I know into watching it. I bring them over to my house, or bring them over to the house, and my house. I bring them over to the house. We all watch the pay-per-views, and I don't charge anybody. That tends to scare people away from wanting to watch a pay-per-view. So I was at Hastings, and so I went straight. I was looking the first time. I mean, usually that's what I just go for now. But at the time, I'm getting myself confused now. No, I was at a Hastings, and I was looking around just to rent something entertaining to watch. Usually I would just go for a horror movie, and I was just looking around, and I went to the sports section. I was still into wrestling at the time. WWE, I think, was the only thing around. They had just bought WCW or something like that. And I'm not too sure exactly what the era was, the WWF era or WWE era. I'm not even sure if it was which one it was, by the way, at the time, because seriously, it used to be WWF and now it's WWE. But I was looking around the sports section DVDs, and I came across a UFC DVD, UFC 44 Undisputed, with Tito Ortiz and Randy Couture. And Randy Couture was a UFC. I didn't know anything about this, by the way. I'm talking like I knew everything at the time. But I recognized Tito Ortiz. I had no idea who Randy Couture was. I didn't even know he beat Vitor Belfort when I later on found out. Because after that DVD, changed my life. I think if I had seen a UFC, and I did used to watch the UFCs back then, I don't know why I took so long being such a fan, or being so loyal to wrestling, because I would watch UFCs, and it's not that I should really pick between the two, but I used to watch WWE or wrestling for a long time, and I went back to me, my uncle Jesse, he used to rent the tapes. There were VHS tapes at the time of the old UFCs, and we watched them, and I thought it was really exciting. One of my favorite fighters was Tank Abbott, and I think my uncle Jesse thought that I liked him because of his attitude and how he was the bad guy, and he would always point out to me certain things when we were watching movies and stuff on why I would be going for the villain, and that was usually the case, but it wasn't really necessarily because he was a bad guy. Don't get me wrong, his antics were hilarious, and I thought he was a really good character and good for the sport as far as making it popular. And you could even see in some of those old UFCs, there's a bunch of people without any shirts on that have a T, and three other guys, to the side of him, and each of them have a letter for Tank, TANK, and then I think there was three other people who had ASS spelled on their chest right after them. Just they were trying to be asses themselves, but they were trying to ruin the whole Tank, support. But no, that's the UFC that got me into it. And at the time, I was very lucky to watch that UFC because it wasn't boring like I remembered some of the old UFCs. And if I'm going to be a loyal fan and a very honest fan, I have to be super honest when I talk about this, because it really was boring at times. The old UFCs had some great things about it. It used to be anything goes, pretty much. Besides, without the only exception was taking a weapon into the octagon. But pretty much, there was no rules. You could eye gouge. You could punch to the groin. I think there was one time that they were punching this one guy in the groin so much that I think I saw a testicle fly out of the guy's mouth. And I mean, after that, man, I had to go back. I made the mistake of not seeing UFC 43 on the shelves at the time. So when I saw UFC 44 and I went to go get UFC 43, I kind of already knew what happened. Especially since UFC 44 had, it had Randy Couture, it had the whole storyline. I mean, it showed everything that happened with Chuck Liddell, but still, I wanted to see it. And then pretty much after that, it was a couple years later that I remember reading on a magazine. I don't even know why I picked up this magazine, because like I said, I wasn't into mixed martial arts, but somehow I guess I must have just been wanting to read something different, and I picked up some kind of mixed, maybe just a martial arts magazine. At the time, there was more about karate and people with the nunchucks on the cover, and swords and shit. So I picked up one of those magazines usually just to get a review or see something with Bruce Lee or this and that. And they had some pictures of Rampage Jackson's Vanderlei Silva, who I first saw in there. And I saw Rampage with his chain. I saw Vanderlei with the crazy look. And I remember Vanderlei looked pretty familiar. I didn't know too much about Rampage. So when I was looking at the pictures and in the magazine and reading about what happened, it was a tournament that happened, and it was the Final Four, and it was 2003 Final Conflict. That's the one where Vanderlei Silva ended up beating Rampage Jackson. I remember reading that and remembering I was a Vanderlei Silva fan at the time, more so than Rampage, and I still love both of the guys. I'm still a big fan of both, but at the time I went for Vanderlei, choosing from that magazine article. And after that, that was the last time I ever saw Pride. I didn't know anything about Pride Fighting Championships, and I went to my uncle's during the summer, and he was I think he was telling me about some mixed martial arts, and I had just gotten into the DVDs with the UFC Undisputed, and then 43, and I bought Supernatural 46, and then I bought 47, which was Payback. I'm sorry, It's On. 48 was Payback, and then 49 was Unfinished Business, and I kept on buying them from that point on. And then I found out about Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz, which was a UFC I saw at a friend's house that one of his friends had recorded, and we all watched it. And I was mainly watching it because of Ken Shamrock, and that's where I actually first heard of Tito. And I remember Tito from back in the day UFCs as well. He used to walk out with Tank Abbott, so I was real familiar with those guys. And I had to go buy UFC 40 after that. After I got 49 Unfinished Business with Belfort and Couture, and which was, to me, I was so hyped, man. Anytime, when I first started buying these DVDs, I remember one of the most exciting, and these were some of the first UFC DVDs I purchased and seen, and it really gave a chance to UFC 45. I believe it was Revolution. Yes, Revolution. Robbie Lawler and Chris Lytle instantly made me a fan. And it wasn't just that fight. Phil Baroni and Evan Tanner that night made me a fan for life. And ever since, that the whole cool box art and Tank and Cabbage's fight being stopped, that night, from that point on, I just became a UFC addict. And I kept on fighting it. I kept on buying more and more DVDs, and that's pretty much how I got into it. But I don't have a list here of any questions that were sent to me. I put this video up thinking that I was going to answer some viewers' questions, but it turns out that I've never put up a video on YouTube yet. I have, sadly, but I haven't had anybody ask me any questions, is what I meant. Whoa. Well, don't I feel like... This just in. I have no life, and there was never any questions to answer from any viewers on YouTube. Oh, actually, this just in. Apparently, nobody cares what I have to say.